Ladies and gentlemen, patriots, and hardworking Americans, welcome back to the channel where we refuse to let the mainstream media dictate the narrative. Before we dive into the firestorm brewing in the Midwest, let's get one thing crystal clear for the censors and the fact-checkers hovering over the delete button. What we are about to discuss is a hypothetical scenario, a projection based on the very real, very dangerous trajectory we are seeing in Minnesota today. We are connecting the dots that the nightly news refuses to touch, asking what if the current lawlessness escalates to its logical, terrifying conclusion. Imagine, if you will, the land of 10,000 lakes turning into the land of 10,000 lawsuits, where the governor's mansion is no longer a seat of executive power but a bunker of resistance against the United States Constitution. We are looking at a situation where Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey aren't just bending the rules, they are shredding the rule of law and tossing the confetti in the face of federal agents. But while the pundits talk about legal theories and jurisdiction, I want to talk about something that hits a lot harder and a lot closer to home. I want to talk about your bank account, your property value, and the future of your children's inheritance. You see, when we talk about sanctuary state policies or the obstruction of ICE, the Democrats like to frame it as a humanitarian crusade, a moral high ground that makes them feel warm and fuzzy inside. But let's rip the mask off that argument and look at the cold, hard cash reality that is bleeding the American taxpayer dry. When a governor directs state resources to block federal law enforcement, he isn't just committing a political stunt, he is writing a massive check that you are going to have to cash. Every minute that local police are told to stand down, every hour that a school administrator spends blocking an ICE agent instead of teaching our kids, that is tax money being set on fire. Think about the immediate financial fallout of a state government openly warring with the Department of Justice. We aren't talking about pocket change here, we are talking about the potential suspension of billions of dollars in federal funding. If Washington decides that Minnesota is in open rebellion, which, let's be honest, obstructing federal agents is exactly that, the first thing to go is the federal grant money for highways, for education, and for public safety. Who do you think makes up the difference when that tap runs dry? It's not Tim Walz writing a personal check, it's the property owner in the suburbs, the small business owner on Main Street, and the hourly worker seeing their state income tax spike to cover the deficit. Furthermore, let's discuss the risk premium of living in a lawless jurisdiction. Insurance companies are not charities, they are actuaries who look at data, and the data says that when a government refuses to enforce the law, chaos ensues. We saw it in 2020, and we are seeing the echoes of it now. When the rule of law degrades, insurance premiums for businesses and homeowners skyrocket because the risk of property damage, theft, and civil unrest goes through the roof. If you are wondering why your car insurance or your home policy just jumped 20%, look no further than the politicians who think protecting criminal aliens is more important than protecting your neighborhood. And what happens to the local economy when the National Guard has to be called in, not to handle a natural disaster, but to do the job that the governor refuses to let the police do? It sends a signal to every investor, every corporation, and every family looking to move, stay away. Capital is a coward, it flees from instability. When businesses see a state government that is more interested in fighting the feds than paving the roads or keeping the streets safe, they pack up and move to Texas or Florida. That erodes the tax base even further, leaving the remaining citizens to shoulder a heavier burden for a crumbling infrastructure. Senator Steve Drazkowski knows this, And that is why his call for impeachment articles isn't just political theater, it is a desperate attempt to stop the financial bleeding. He understands that you cannot have a functioning economy without a functioning legal system. When you have witnesses testifying that school employees are being trained to obstruct federal agents, you are effectively turning public schools into safe houses for fugitives, funded by your property taxes. You are paying for the very system that is undermining your safety. It is the ultimate insult to the injury of inflation that we are all already feeling. Let's dig deeper into the DOJ investigation mentioned in the reports. An investigation of this magnitude requires a massive legal defense. The state of Minnesota will likely hire high-priced, white-shoe law firms to defend Walz and Frey against the United States government. Those billable hours run into the thousands of dollars per hour. And again, I have to ask, who is paying the bill for the governor's legal defense fund? It comes right out of the general fund. While our veterans are struggling to get care and our roads are filled with potholes, millions of dollars will be funneled into a legal battle solely designed to protect the governor's political ego and his radical agenda. This creates a vicious cycle of poverty and dependence. As the middle class gets squeezed by higher taxes and lower property values, they have less disposable income to spend in the local economy. Small businesses suffer, layoffs happen, and the welfare rolls grow. And who does the Democrat Party claim to be the savior of? The very people they just impoverished with their policies. It is a perfect, cynical machine. They break your leg with lawlessness and taxes, and then hand you a crutch called government assistance in exchange for your vote. Now, consider the military angle. The Pentagon preparing to deploy troops isn't just a headline, it's a massive logistical expense. But beyond the cost of the deployment itself, think about the signal it sends to the global market. The United States is supposed to be the bedrock of stability. When the world sees American troops deployed on American soil because a rogue governor won't follow the law, it shakes confidence in the dollar and the entire US market. Your 401k feels the tremors of this instability. This isn't just a Minnesota problem, this is a contagion that affects the financial security of every retiree from Arizona to Maine. The weaponization of the justice system that Walz complains about is a classic projection. He claims he is the victim, but the real victims are the citizens who follow the rules, pay their taxes, and expect their government to maintain order. By framing the enforcement of immigration law as political persecution, Walz is trying to gaslight the public into believing that lawlessness is a virtue. But the market doesn't lie. You can spin the narrative on CNN, but you cannot spin the bond market. If Minnesota's credit rating takes a hit because of political instability, the cost of borrowing for the state goes up, and once again, the taxpayer is left holding the bag. We also have to talk about the cost of the crime itself. When ICE is obstructed, it means individuals who have been flagged for deportation, often for criminal activity beyond just their immigration status, remain in our communities. When a crime is committed by someone who should have been deported, the cost of that crime, the police work, the court time, the incarceration, and the tragic cost to the victims, is a direct tax levied by the governor's negligence. Every dollar spent processing a repeat offender who shouldn't have been here is a dollar stolen from our schools, our parks, and our future. This brings us to the crux of the matter regarding Mayor Jacob Frey. Cities are the economic engines of our states. When a mayor decides that his city is a sanctuary from federal law, he is essentially declaring that his city is exempt from reality. But reality has a way of catching up. We are seeing a mass exodus from these blue cities, a flight of capital that leaves behind hollowed-out downtowns and a shrinking tax base. Minneapolis is already on the brink. Adding a federal obstruction charge to the mix is like tossing an anchor to a drowning man. The commercial real estate collapse we are seeing is directly tied to this governance failure. So, as we watch this hypothetical scenario unfold, this very real possibility of soldiers on the streets and a governor in the dock, do not let them distract you with emotional rhetoric about compassion. There is nothing compassionate about bankrupting the working class. There is nothing compassionate about destroying the value of the homes we worked our whole lives to buy. This is a battle for the economic soul of the nation. It is a battle between the productive class and the parasitic political class that views your wallet as their personal piggy bank for their ideological experiments. In the next segment, we are going to look specifically at the timeline of events that led us here. We are going to trace the decisions made by Walz and Frey, step by step, and show you exactly where they decided that their political career was more important than your financial survival. We will analyze the specific statutes they are accused of violating and what the penalties look like, not just for them, but for the state budget. Because in the end, when the politicians play games with the law, it's the taxpayer who loses the game. Welcome back to the second hour of this deep dive into the crisis unfolding in Minnesota. In our first segment, we followed the money and saw how the radical policies of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey are practically robbing the American taxpayer. Now, we are going to pivot to the timeline of betrayal. We need to understand how we got here, because this level of institutional rot doesn't happen overnight. It is a slow creep, a cancer that spreads while good people are too busy working and raising their families to notice until it is too late. What we are witnessing today with the Department of Justice intervention and the looming threat of military deployment is not an isolated incident. It is the culmination of years of systemic failure and a deliberate erosion of the rule of law. To truly understand the gravity of the accusations brought forth by Senator Steve Drazkowski, we have to rewind the tape. We have to look at the precedent that was set, not just last week, but going back to the dark days of 2020. That was the turning point. That was when the leadership in Minnesota sent a clear message to the world, and we will surrender. When the 3rd Precinct was allowed to burn, when the streets of Minneapolis were ceded to the mob, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey showed us their cards. They proved that when push comes to shove, they will bow to the radical left rather than stand up for law and order. That moment of hesitation, that refusal to deploy the guard effectively when the city was on fire, established a doctrine of weakness that has emboldened every criminal element in the state since. Fast forward to the present day, and that doctrine of weakness has mutated into a doctrine of active obstruction. We are no longer just talking about standing by while a building burns. We are talking about the state government actively building a fortress around illegal activity. The reports coming out of the hearings are absolutely chilling. We have testimony suggesting that state employees, people whose salaries are paid by you and me, are being instructed to impede federal law enforcement agents. This isn't just passive resistance, this is an active operation. It is the government of Minnesota declaring war on the government of the United States. Let's focus on the schools for a moment, because this is where the betrayal strikes the deepest chord. Schools are supposed to be sanctuaries of learning, safe havens for our children. But under the Walz administration's guidance, they are allegedly being transformed into safe houses for those evading the law. When you have administrators being trained on how to block ICE agents, you are introducing a criminal element directly into the environment where your children eat lunch and study math. You are prioritizing the comfort of a fugitive over the safety of American students. This is the ultimate America Last policy. It is an indoctrination camp masquerading as an education system, teaching the next generation that laws are optional and that federal authority is the enemy. Senator Drazkowski calls this a weaponization of the state against the republic, and he is absolutely right. When he stepped up to the podium to threaten articles of impeachment, the mainstream media tried to paint him as a radical. But let's look at the facts. Who is the radical here? Is it the man asking for the laws on the books to be enforced? Or is it the governor who thinks he can unilaterally nullify federal immigration statutes? Drazkowski isn't the aggressor, he is the last line of defense. He is the whistleblower screaming fire in a crowded theater while the governor is busy locking the exit doors. His move to introduce impeachment isn't a political stunt, it is a constitutional necessity. If the legislature doesn't act to check this executive overreach, then the separation of powers is dead in Minnesota. The specific accusations regarding the hindering of law enforcement are not minor infractions. In the real world, the world where you and I live, if you or I interfered with a federal agent during an arrest, we would be in handcuffs before we could finish a sentence. We would be charged with obstruction of justice, aiding and abetting, and a laundry list of other felonies. Yet, when a mayor or a governor does it from behind a podium or through a bureaucratic memo, they call it policy. This double standard is what infuriates the average American. It creates a two-tiered justice system, a one for the political elite who can break the law with impunity, and one for the rest of us who get hammered for a parking ticket. And now, let's address the elephant in the room, the involvement of the Pentagon and the Department of Justice. The Democrats want to spin this as fascism or tyranny. You hear Walz using words like weaponization of justice to describe the investigation into his administration. It is classic projection. The DOJ investigating a state for obstructing federal law is not weaponization. It is the basic function of the executive branch ensuring the supremacy of federal law. Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, is not a suggestion. It states clearly that the laws of the United States are the supreme law of the land. Walz seems to think the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party platform supersedes the U.S. Constitution. He is about to get a very harsh history lesson. The potential deployment of military assets to restore order is a scenario that should keep every American awake at night, not because the military is the enemy, but because our civilian leadership has failed so spectacularly that the military is the only option left. When local police are handcuffed by their mayors, and state troopers are directed by their governors to look the other way, who is left to uphold the law? The vacuum of authority created by Walz and Frey invites chaos. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does power. If the state won't police itself, the federal government has a duty to step in. It is a tragic state of affairs, but let's be clear about who caused it. It wasn't the bad orange man, it was the weak leadership in St. Paul. Let's dig into that sanctuary concept itself. It sounds so noble, doesn't it? Sanctuary. It evokes images of churches and protection. But in practice, as applied by the radical left, it is a cynical tool to import a permanent voting bloc. They are importing poverty and dependence to secure their political future, and they are using the sanctuary label to shield this operation from scrutiny. By refusing to cooperate with ICE, they are effectively erasing the border. A country without borders is not a country, it is just a parking lot on the North American continent. And Minnesota has become the VIP section of that parking lot for anyone who wants to skip the line and break the rules. The witnesses mentioned in the transcripts, the regular folks seeing the chaos on the ground, are the unsung heroes of this story. They are the ones documenting the decline. They see the drug deals in the parks that used to be safe. They see the gang graffiti on the schools. They hear the instructions given to staff to resist federal agents. Their testimony is the smoking gun that shatters the narrative of the Minnesota Nice. There is nothing nice about letting cartels operate with impunity because you are afraid of being called a racist. There is nothing nice about sacrificing the safety of your constituents on the altar of political correctness. Governor Walz's response to all of this has been defiance. Instead of taking a step back and saying, maybe we went too far, he doubles down. He attacks the investigators. He attacks the messengers. This is the behavior of a man who knows he is cornered. He knows that if the curtain is pulled back fully, the people of Minnesota will see the extent of the mismanagement. He is fighting for his political survival, and a desperate politician is a dangerous animal. He will burn the house down to rule over the ashes. That is why the impeachment talk is so critical. It is the emergency brake on a runaway train. We also need to talk about the morale of the law enforcement officers in Minnesota. Imagine being a police officer in Minneapolis or a sheriff's deputy in a surrounding county right now. You put on the badge, you kiss your family goodbye, and you go out to do a dangerous job. But you do it knowing that your own governor and mayor are actively working against you. You arrest a criminal, and the sanctuary policies let them out the back door before you've even finished the paperwork. You try to coordinate with federal partners to take down a trafficking ring, and you get a memo from City Hall telling you to cease contact. It is demoralizing. It leads to early retirements, recruitment shortages, and a police force that is hollowed out. And when the police force collapses, the criminals win. It is that simple. The chaos that necessitates military intervention is the direct result of this demoralization. You cannot demonize the police for 5 years and then wonder why there is a lawlessness problem. You cannot strip away their qualified immunity, cut their budgets, and undermine their authority, and then act surprised when the streets are out of control. The National Guard is a great institution, but they are not police officers. They are soldiers. If we are asking soldiers to do police work, it means our society has fractured. It means the social contract has been broken by the very people elected to uphold it. As we move deeper into this hypothetical scenario, we have to ask ourselves, what is the endgame here for the Democrats? Do they truly believe that a lawless state is a sustainable model? Or is this part of a larger strategy to destabilize the system entirely? Some call it incompetence, I call it a strategy. Cloward Piven strategy: overload the system until it collapses, so you can rebuild it in a socialist image. Every moved piece on this chessboard points to that conclusion. They are overloading the schools, overloading the welfare system, overloading the courts, and now, they are overloading the patience of the federal government. Senator Drazkowski is trying to stop this collapse. By threatening impeachment, he is trying to restore a standard of accountability. He is saying, no, you cannot use the governor's office to aid and abet federal crimes. It is a bold move, a courageous move, and frankly, it is the only move left. If the legislature fails to act, they are complicit. If the voters fail to support him, they are sealing their own fate. The line has been drawn in the sand. On one side, you have the rule of law, national sovereignty, and public safety. On the other side, you have the Walz-Frey axis of chaos, open borders, and political corruption. In the next segment, we are going to shift gears and look at the what-if scenarios. What happens if the troops actually hit the ground? What does martial law, or something close to it, look like in an American state in the 21st century? We will analyze the constitutional implications, the inevitable civil unrest, and how you, the patriot prepared for anything, can protect your family when the government clashes with itself. We will also discuss the media's role in covering up this disaster and how they will try to spin the military intervention as an invasion rather than a rescue mission. Stay tuned, because the temperature is about to get a whole lot hotter. We are now entering the third hour of this critical broadcast, and if you have been with us from the beginning, you know we aren't here to sugarcoat the truth. We have analyzed the financial devastation, we have traced the timeline of political betrayal, and now, we have to look the beast in the eye. We have to talk about the scenario that everyone is whispering about but no one wants to say out loud, the deployment of federal troops on American soil to quell a rebellion led by a state government. The Pentagon's potential involvement in Minnesota isn't just a logistical footnote, it is a crossing of the Rubicon. It signifies that the civil authority in Minnesota has not just failed, it has defected. When we talk about the National Guard or active duty military stepping in, the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, is already writing the script. I can see the headlines now. They will scream insurrection, they will scream dictatorship, they will scream fascism. They will show you tight shots of soldiers holding rifles and frame it as an assault on democracy. But do not let them gaslight you. Do not let them invert reality. If the military has to go into Minneapolis to enforce federal law, it is not an invasion, it is a rescue mission. It is a restoration of the republic in a territory that has been held hostage by a radical ideology that believes it is above the law. Let's look at the Constitution, a document that Governor Walz seems to have used as a coaster for his coffee rather than a guide for his governance. Article 4, Section 4 guarantees to every state in this union a republican form of government and protects them against domestic violence. When a governor refuses to enforce the law, when he allows mobs to rule the streets and instructs state employees to obstruct federal agents, he is denying his citizens a republican form of government. He is instituting mob rule. The federal government has not just the right, but the duty, to step in and restore order. The fascists aren't the ones enforcing the law, the fascists are the ones who think they can suspend the law because they won an election. But let's play this hypothetical war game out. Suppose the order is given. Suppose convoys of federal assets start rolling down I-94. What happens next? We are not naive. We know the playbook of the radical left. They will not go quietly. They will not say, "Okay, you caught us, we'll follow the rules now." No. They will burn it down. We are looking at the potential for a Summer of Love 2.0, but on steroids. The professional agitators, the unofficials, the funded anarchists, they are waiting for this visual. They want the optics of the people versus the military to fuel their revolution. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey, knowing their political careers are effectively over if federal authority is restored, will likely play the role of martyrs. They will stand on the steps of the Capitol, surrounded by their handpicked activists, and decry the federal occupation. It will be political theater of the highest order, designed to incite violence while keeping their hands clean. They will use the very chaos they created as a shield. Look, they will say, the soldiers brought violence, ignoring the fact that the violence was already there, festering under their watch. And what does this mean for the average Minnesotan? It means checkpoints. It means curfews. It means the suspension of normal life. But here is the hard truth: you are already living under a suspension of normal life. Is it normal to fear for your life when you walk downtown? Is it normal to have your business extorted by gangs? Is it normal to pay taxes to a government that hates you? The temporary inconvenience of a military presence to clean out the rot is a price we might have to pay to get our freedom back. It is the chemotherapy needed to kill the cancer of lawlessness. It's painful, it's ugly, but the alternative is death, the death of the state as a functioning entity. We also need to discuss the deep state aspect of this. The bureaucracy in Washington is not a monolith. There are patriots, and there are partisans. While the DOJ investigation is a good sign, do not think for a second that there aren't elements within the federal government trying to sabotage it. There will be leaks. There will be delays. There will be anonymous sources telling the Washington Post that the investigation is a sham. This is a battle between the elected representatives of the people and the permanent administrative state that wants to protect the status quo. Walz and Frey are protégés of this system. They are counting on their friends in high places to stall, to obfuscate, and to run out the clock. This is why Senator Drazkowski's actions are so vital. By pushing for impeachment at the state level, he is opening a second front in this war. He is forcing the state legislature to go on the record. Every representative who votes against impeachment is effectively signing a loyalty oath to the lawless regime. They are putting their name next to the chaos. This provides clarity for the voters. There is no middle ground anymore. You are either for the rule of law, or you are for the rule of the mob. The gray area has evaporated. Let's talk about the economic siege that accompanies civil unrest. We mentioned the flight of capital earlier, but consider the supply chain. Truckers are the lifeblood of this nation. They are patriotic, hard-working Americans. Do you think they are going to drive their rigs into a city that is under siege, where the police have been neutered and the National Guard is battling rioters? No. They will bypass Minnesota. We saw it in other cities during the riots. Deliveries stop. Grocery store shelves go empty. Fuel becomes scarce. The just-in-time delivery system that our modern economy relies on is incredibly fragile. It snaps the moment civil order breaks down. So, when we talk about this hypothetical scenario, we aren't just talking about politics, and we are talking about survival. If you are in the Twin Cities metro area, you need to be asking yourself serious questions right now. Do I have 2 weeks of food? Do I have a way to protect my family if the police don't answer 911? Do I have a plan to get out if the highways are blocked? This isn't fear-mongering, this is risk management. The government has broken its contract with you. You are on your own. That is the message Walz sends every time he blocks ICE. He is telling you that the safety of a criminal alien is more important than your safety. Believe him. The psychological warfare component is also massive. The media will try to make you feel like you are the criminal for supporting law and order. They will call you a bootlicker for supporting the troops. They will call you xenophobic for wanting immigration laws enforced. This is designed to demoralize you, to make you silence yourself. But look around. Look at the comments section. Look at the town halls. You are the majority. The silent majority is waking up, and they are realizing that Minnesota nice was just a code word for Minnesota passive. We can't afford to be passive anymore. Being nice doesn't stop a carjacking. Being nice doesn't stop a cartel. Strength stops them. Order stops them. I want to pivot back to the weaponization claim. It is the ultimate irony. The Democrats have weaponized the IRS against conservatives. They have weaponized the FBI against parents at school board meetings. They have weaponized the intelligence agencies to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story. And now, the moment the law turns its gaze toward them, they cry foul. It is the cry of a bully who finally gets punched in the nose. They can dish it out, but they cannot take it. Governor Walz is finding out that the Constitution is not a one-way street. It binds him just as tightly as it binds anyone else. If this escalation continues, we might see a constitutional crisis not seen since the Civil Rights era or even the Civil War. Can a state effectively secede from the legal authority of the Union while remaining in it? That is what sanctuary status effectively attempts to do. It is a soft secession. It is a declaration that federal law stops at our border. If the federal government allows this to stand in Minnesota, it will spread. California, New York, Illinois, they are all watching. If Walz wins this staring contest, the United States becomes the United States in name only. We become a loose confederation of warring tribes. That is the stakes. The military, if deployed, will have strict rules of engagement. They are professionals. But urban operations are a nightmare. The potential for mistakes, for collateral damage, is real. And every mistake will be magnified by the media to paint the soldiers as monsters. We must be prepared to stand by our servicemen and women. They didn't ask for this mission. They signed up to fight terrorists overseas, not to police American streets because a governor failed to do his job. The blame for every boot on the ground, for every tear gas canister fired, lies squarely at the feet of Tim Walz and Jacob Frey. They are the architects of this disaster. And let's not forget the role of the unions in this. The teachers' unions, the public sector unions, they are the foot soldiers of the Walz machine. They are the ones indoctrinating the staff to resist ICE. They are the ones organizing the protests. They are protecting their power at the expense of the public good. Breaking their stranglehold on our institutions is part of the solution. You cannot fix the schools or the bureaucracy until you break the power of the unions that demand non-compliance with federal law. It is a corrupt bargain, and money for votes, protection for obedience. In the final segment of this hour, we are going to talk about the path forward. Is there a way back from the brink? Can Minnesota be saved, or is it destined to become the Detroit of the 21st century? We will discuss the legal mechanisms of the recall, the upcoming elections, and what a true America First agenda looks like for state governance. We will also answer the question, if the federal government succeeds in restoring order, what precedents does that set for the future? Will a Republican president use these same powers to clean up other sanctuary cities? The left is terrified of that possibility, and they should be. Because law and order is coming, and it's bringing the heavy artillery. Stay tuned. You do not want to miss the conclusion of this deep dive. We are going to give you the blueprint for reclaiming your state and your country. Welcome back to the final hour of this special report. We have stared into the abyss of a state in collapse. We have counted the cost in dollars, in dignity, and in the erosion of our constitutional rights. But now, it is time to pivot from the diagnosis to the cure. It is time to talk about solutions. Because as bleak as this hypothetical scenario looks, with troops on the horizon and a governor in legal crosshairs, there is a path back to sanity. It is a narrow path, and it is steep, but for the sake of our children and our country, we have to climb it. First, let's dismantle the lie that there is nothing we can do. That is exactly what the ruling class wants you to believe. They want you demoralized. They want you to think that the machine is too big, too corrupt, and too powerful to fight. But Senator Steve Drazkowski proved them wrong the moment he uttered the word impeachment. By simply putting that option on the table, he shattered the illusion of their invincibility. He reminded them that they serve at the pleasure of the people and the Constitution, not the other way around. So, what does a true America First solution look like in Minnesota? It starts with a complete purge of that sanctuary apparatus. It is not enough to just enforce the law, we have to dismantle the infrastructure of resistance. That means firing every single bureaucrat who signed off on the training materials instructing staff to obstruct ICE. If you work for the state, your loyalty is to the law. If you cannot follow the law because of your personal convictions, you are free to resign and join an activist group. But you will not collect a taxpayer's salary while working to undermine the taxpayer's safety. Period. Next, we need to talk about the angel families. Throughout this entire crisis, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have talked endlessly about the rights of illegal immigrants. They have held press conferences bemoaning the cruelty of deportation. But where are the press conferences for the victims? Where is the outrage for the American citizens raped, murdered, or assaulted by individuals who had no right to be in this country in the first place? Their silence is deafening. It is a moral stain on their administration. In a sane world, a governor's first duty is to his own citizens. When a crime is committed by someone who has been previously deported or shielded from deportation by local policy, the state government is an accessory to that crime. We need legislation that allows victims of these preventable crimes to sue the sanctuary cities and the state officials personally for their negligence. Hit them where it hurts, in their wallets. If Mayor Frey knew that his sanctuary policy could cost him his personal assets when a tragedy occurs, you would see that policy vanish overnight. Accountability changes behavior. Let's look at the broader political chessboard. The left is terrified of what is happening in Minnesota, not because they care about Tim Walz, but because they are terrified of the precedent. If the federal government successfully intervenes here, if they successfully prosecute state officials for obstruction of justice, it opens the floodgates. It means that the Department of Justice, under a future Republican administration, could march into Chicago, into New York City, into San Francisco, and clean house. It means the end of the sanctuary city era. This is why they are fighting so hard. This is why the national media is trying to spin this as a coup. They know that Minnesota is the first domino. If Minnesota falls back into the column of law and order, the entire blue wall of lawlessness begins to crumble. They are fighting for their survival as a political force that relies on importing voters to maintain power. We are fighting for the survival of the nation as a sovereign entity. The stakes could not be higher. Now, consider the military aspect again. While no one wants to see tanks on Main Street, we must recognize that the National Guard is often the only institution left that still commands respect. But they must be used correctly. They should not be used to police the citizens, they should be used to secure the perimeter and support the federal agents doing their jobs. The message must be clear: this is not martial law against the people, this is the enforcement of law against a rogue government. The target is the corruption in the state house, not the family in the suburbs. We also have to address the brain drain. As we discussed, smart money leaves. But smart people leave too. The best doctors, the best engineers, the best entrepreneurs, they are looking at Minnesota and seeing a sinking ship. To reverse this, we need a signal of strength. The impeachment of a lawless governor would be the ultimate signal. It would tell the world that Minnesota is open for business again, that the rule of law has returned, and that your property rights are safe. It would spark an economic renaissance. But what if the legislature fails? What if the rhinos, Republicans in name only, get weak knees and refuse to support Drazkowski? Then the burden falls on you, the voter. The ballot box is the ultimate jury box. Every representative who refuses to hold Walz accountable must be primaried. We need to stop electing nice Republicans who just want to be invited to the cocktail parties. We need fighters. We need people who understand that we are in a cold civil war and are willing to use the levers of power to win it. The independent voter is the key here. The media tells us that independents hate conflict. They say that aggressive tactics turn them off. I disagree. I think independents hate chaos. I think they hate seeing their grocery bills double. I think they hate worrying if their catalytic converter will be there in the morning. When we frame this fight not as Republican versus Democrat, but as order versus chaos, safety versus danger, prosperity versus poverty, we win. The facts are on our side. The reality of life in Walz's Minnesota is our best campaign ad. Let's go deeper into the obstruction charge. The federal statute, 18 U.S. Code Section 1505, deals with obstruction of proceedings before departments, agencies, and committees. If it can be proven that there was a coordinated conspiracy to impede ICE, which is a federal agency, then we are talking about serious prison time. We aren't talking about a slap on the wrist. We are talking about federal felonies. The sight of a governor or mayor being led away in handcuffs would be shocking, yes. But it would also be a powerful reminder that in America, no man is above the law. Not even a governor. Especially not a governor. The irony is that the left spent 4 years screaming no one is above the law when they were chasing Donald Trump. Now, suddenly, when it applies to them, they want special treatment. They want executive privilege. They want prosecutorial discretion. It is hypocrisy on a galactic scale. And it is our job, the job of the alternative media and the job of every patriot listening, to call it out. Do not let them pivot. Do not let them change the subject. Keep the focus on the crime, obstruction of federal law enforcement. And what about the children? We touched on schools earlier, but think about the long-term psychological impact on a generation raised in this environment. They are being taught that authority is illegitimate. They are being taught that the police are the enemy. They are being raised in a culture of grievance and victimhood. Reclaiming our schools is just as important as reclaiming our streets. We need to ban the political indoctrination that paints ICE as villains. We need to teach civics again, real civics, where students learn why borders matter, why laws exist, and why citizenship is a privilege, not a right. As we wrap up this intense analysis, let's look at the what's next immediate timeline. If the DOJ moves forward, expect subpoenas. Lots of them. Expect the state to fight them, claiming states' rights. Again, the irony of Democrats using a states' rights argument is rich. This legal battle will go to the Supreme Court. And with the current composition of the court, the Constitution stands a fighting chance. The justices understand the supremacy clause. They understand that a patchwork of 50 different immigration policies is unsustainable for a nation. So, do not lose hope. The darkest hour is just before the dawn. The exposure of this corruption is the first step in cleaning it up. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and thanks to brave whistleblowers and leaders like Drazkowski, the sun is shining bright on the rot in St. Paul. The system is shaking because the people are waking up. In our final few minutes, I want to leave you with a challenge. Do not just consume this content. Act on it. Share this video. Talk to your neighbors. Go to your school board meetings. Demand answers from your local sheriff. Ask them, will you cooperate with ICE, or will you protect criminals? Put them on the record. Local politics is where the war is won or lost. You might not be able to change the mind of a corrupt governor, but you can absolutely influence your city council. You can take back your town. And if enough towns take back their power, the state will follow. This hypothetical scenario we painted today serves as a warning. It is a ghost of Christmas future. It shows us where we are headed if we do not change course. But the future is not written yet. We hold the pen. We can choose the path of lawlessness, decline, and despair, or we can choose the path of strength, sovereignty, and renewal. The choice is yours, Minnesota. The choice is yours, America. Thank you for watching. Keep your powder dry, keep your faith strong, and never apologize for loving your country. We will see you in the next broadcast, where we will continue to hold the line for truth, justice, and the American way.